My name's Dale Robinson. I'm the mayor of the municipality of McDougall.
What is your relationship to McDougall? Did you grow up here, move here for a job, cottage, etc.?
Yep, I was born and raised in the town of Parry Sound, right just south of the township of McDougall. But we had a cottage since 1958 in McDougall, which is kind of a strange thing because in the summer we would pack up at the end of June and move all of 4 kilometers to our cottage on Georgian Bay and spend the summer there and then move back in again, back into town at the end of the summer. But nonetheless, no matter what the distance is, it's still that chance to be on Georgian Bay was great. So that was my introduction to McDougall Township.
How long and how many terms have you held your current position?
I've been on council for 25 years now, and this current term, which is just coming to an end, is my 5th term as mayor.
Wow.
So I have the distinction of being the last Reeve in McDougall and the first mayor.
Why did you first decide to run?
At the time I was a member of the McDougall Volunteer Fire Department, so that kind of gave me an introduction to the community of McDougall, and I got interested in the interaction between the fire department and council, and then thought I could contribute something to council, so I decided that I'd put my name forward, and not for any reason to move anyone out of there, just because I thought I could contribute. 2 terms as a councillor, and then moved on to the position of Reeve, which then switched to the position of mayor.
How has McDougall changed over the years?
Drastically. It's gone from a small rural community where everybody knows everyone to we've had a lot of development, a lot of good development, both seasonal and permanent residences. So that's grown the number of people, and the community's not quite as close as what it used to be. Not necessarily a bad thing, it's just a lot more people around. I can see the perspective of both a seasonal resident and a permanent resident, because for 15 years my wife and I and our children lived in Toronto and commuted up here to the cottage. So I know what it's like to be seasonal and what the expectations are, but then having been a permanent resident before that in Parry Sound, and then since 1992 we've been permanent residents in McDougall. So I have that perspective as well, and really there's no difference between the two. We're all, whether we're seasonal or permanent, we're here because we love this area.
Prior to COVID, what was the greatest challenge as Reeve and mayor?
The biggest challenge for me in McDougall came up very early in my term, was we were doing an expansion of the regional landfill for McDougall, which was a big deal. There's a lot of red tape, a lot of engineering, a lot of environmental studies that have to be done to get it right, because we wanted to make sure we got it right. And we have one of the few engineered landfill sites in Ontario where we're actually properly treating the leachate coming off the garbage and dealing with that properly. So that was a big challenge, dealing with the province and all the rules and regulations that we had to get it done. But we got there, but it was a big challenge.
How much longer will your landfill last?
We've got another, fortunately, our residents and residents in the surrounding area are doing a lot better at recycling these days than what they were in the past. So we've got probably another 23 to 25 years left service if it stays at the current rates.
When you first heard about COVID, what were your initial thoughts?
I wasn't really sure what it was and what was coming our way. I can remember the time I was on a snowmobile trip with a friend in northern Ontario, very remote areas, not having a whole lot of contact with society other than at night when we got to a lodge or a motel to kind of check in, and we kind of get those daily updates as to this is what's going on from our family members who had left texts or emails for us, or a little bit of limited news we could get. So it was kind of hard to digest, especially in that environment up there where you're looking at pristine snowfalls and hardly much population or anyone around. You kind of wondered, how can something be going wrong at this point in time?
So you kind of answered this one as well, but where were you when you first heard about the lockdowns in Canada, and what were your thoughts? How did you feel?
We were on a snowmobile trip in northern Ontario doing a tour between Cochrane, Hearst, Wawa, Chapleau, and then back over to Cochrane again at the end of the trip. So some pretty remote areas. So it was, my initial thoughts were, can this really be happening? Because it seemed so far away from where we were at the time and what we were doing. So it was pretty hard to believe. But we're getting reports at night from family members of things like there's now a toilet paper shortage going on because people were rushing to grocery stores and starting to stock up on supplies and do it. So it made it, I guess my first reaction was, can this be real? How
did the pandemic change your role on council or council's business?
It just made me a lot more aware I try to be responsive at all times anyway in terms of staff and ratepayers and what their needs are, but I kind of realized that was bringing home that we really had to be careful that we were being protective of each other, because this was a very, as we were being told at the time, a very contagious disease, virus that was spreading amongst our population. So I was like, I guess my overriding feeling was just, let's all be as safe as we can, but still try and be as normal as possible. And that normal part was very difficult.
What do you think your greatest challenge has been during the pandemic?
I think it's just has been trying to follow all the rules and regulations and trying to figure out who to believe at what point in time. I mean, you were hearing at the start some things that kind of defied common sense to me, where you're being told by the medical officer of health or by the provincial medical officer of health things like close your boat ramps, don't let people have access to the water, try and discourage seasonal residents from coming up. And as I said earlier, I was a seasonal resident for a while, and if I was in Toronto when this was going on, I would feel much better having my family up here away from the populated areas and safer than making them stay down there. So it kind of, I had problems just dealing with that, trying to bring the common sense factor into these rules and regulations, and certainly disappointed. Like, I think there were movies out before about a virus and a pandemic affecting the world, whatever, but it seemed like our senior levels of government were really caught flat-footed by this. They just weren't prepared for it.
Right.
And they started out with things like face masks won't do anything, they're no good to you, but it turns out in the end the reason they were saying that is because they knew there wasn't a supply of face masks. The biggest challenge has been trying to keep everyone safe, our ratepayers and our staff, provide a safe working environment, and to try and keep things as normal as possible, which has been pretty difficult because there's definitely a psychological and emotional impact that the pandemic has brought to people as well. So that's been the challenge at the municipal level, is just trying to keep recreation facilities open when we could have them open, and let people have an outlet for some of their frustrations and their concerns as we went along. So that's been the big challenge. And we were told things like snowmobile trails were being closed, which didn't make a lot of sense. And as I mentioned earlier, closing boat ramps and that just didn't seem to be helpful to the situation.
Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
I'm glad we are where we are in the pandemic now, that it's behind us, and I hope we've learned a lot of lessons from it, because I don't think this is the last time we're going to see this, just because of the international nature of the world now, where there's so much commingling of people and travel, that I think when something happens in one little corner of the world, it's going to be all over the world in a very quick matter of time, and I don't think we can react quick enough not to have that happen. So I hope we learned a lesson as to how to deal with it, and to know that it is coming, and to try and keep our people as safe as possible.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you very much.